If someone were to ask me what I thought was the most influential and important game ever to be created, a game so influential it essentially popularized the controller button layout for shooters on console, was one of the first shooters to focus on its story and characters just as much as its gameplay, and was the game that solidified in people's minds that yes, shooters can work on console and be good, I'd say American McGee's Bad Day LA is that game. I'm kidding, of course. This is a Halo Combat Evolved video. It's Halo. In all seriousness though, games like Half-Life and Halo were a big step forward for shooters. Prior to games like this, we had games like Doom and Quake, where the focus was mainly on the gameplay with very little on the way of story. In 1988, Half-Life changed this by adding a very prominent story, but was still locked to being a PC game. In 2001, Halo was released, and whilst not being the first console shooter ever, it was the game which seemed to get everything right. Prior to Halo, there was a serious debate amongst game developers at the time about if console shooters were even worth investing in because no one could really figure out how to make them feel good to play. Moving on to the gameplay, you have to keep in mind most of the stuff I'm going to talk about here is going to probably make you say, why is this a talking point? This is just the standard for gaming. And that's because Halo invented that standard. Console gaming in particular would not be where it is today if it were not for the innovations this game made. Shooters at the time allowed you to carry every single weapon that game had to offer, and quickly allow you to switch between whichever one you wanted with either the numbers on your keyboard or the scroll wheel on your mouse. This obviously would not work well on a console. A few years ago, before I had a PC, I played the original Max Payne on my Xbox, and yeah, having an inventory system like this on a console just feels like arse. Bungie saw this as being an issue and gave the player a 2-weapon limit with the ability to switch between weapons at the press of a button. It is little things like this which set Halo apart from other shooters at the time. 2-weapon limit, dedicated melee button, slower gameplay, regenerating shields to help console players, and aim assist. All these things Bungie didn't necessarily invent. A lot of these were experimented with by other companies prior to Halo, but Bungie perfected and popularized it, which is what invented this new standard that has persisted and permeated itself across all games and genres, elements of which are even present in games made almost 2.5 decades later. Anyway, I know that stuff I talked about is kind of boring, but when it comes to this game, it's very necessary. So let's talk about something a little more interesting, the weapons and combat. Halo's combat revolves around 3 core pillars: melee, grenades, and guns. Melee in this game is pretty basic and easy to understand. It is actually quite high damaging, but depending on what enemy you're trying to melee, it isn't always a viable option. That is unless you melee an enemy in the back, which will instantly kill every enemy except for hunters and flood. Elites you should only attempt to punch from the front if their shields are down or at least very low. Jackals and grunts are always pretty much fair game as long as there aren't a lot of them. There are only 2 types of grenades in Combat Evolved, the frag grenade and the plasma grenade. The frag grenade behaves like most grenades from other games. You throw it, you can bank it off walls, and it does high AoE damage. The plasma grenade behaves more like a sticky grenade. It's best to throw it directly at an enemy and stick them with the blue alien jizz around the ball. The guns themselves are where things start to become unique. Whilst Halo doesn't have the biggest sandbox of weapons, every weapon is designed to fill a specific role. The only exception to this rule being the Magnum and Sniper Rifle, which end up filling the same role in a lot of ways. Now, I could spend half an hour here going over every gun's unique role in this game, but I'm just going to go over a few of my favourites. The assault rifle in this game is more akin to an LMG with its 60 round mag and high fire rate. However, like all human weapons in this game, has low damage against shields. The assault rifle also isn't very accurate when firing in full auto, meaning this gun is best used in medium to short range encounters against unshielded enemies. The assault rifle's closest cousin is the plasma rifle, doing essentially the same thing but with more accuracy and more damage against shields but less damage against health. Unfortunately, this gun gets outshined by the plasma pistol in most cases, as the plasma pistol has the ability to do an overcharged shot which can instantly take down an enemy's shields, and even has some slight bullet tracking. Combining the plasma pistol with the Magnum or Sniper Rifle is what's called the noob combo, which you'll probably see me using a lot of in this footage. The Magnum and Sniper Rifle are the only two guns in the game which have headshot multipliers. The Magnum can one-hit headshot an unshielded enemy, whereas the Sniper's damage is high enough that it can do this with a fully shielded enemy as well. For newer players, the Magnum will be easier to use as it has a lot more ammo in its magazine and doesn't require you to be as accurate to pull off a headshot. Since I mentioned some of the enemies, I suppose we should go over them in a little more detail. Much like the weapon sandbox in this game, almost every enemy has a certain role to play and require different strategies to defeat them. There are two main enemy factions, those being the Covenant and the Flood, with a third more sub-faction called the Sentinels. The Covenant has 5 different types of enemies, with some of these enemies even having multiple different ranks within them. Each of these 5 enemies have their own unique fighting style and quirks that you need to learn to efficiently defeat them. The Covenant are a well-organized army, even having squad structures and a clear hierarchy in alien species and rank. The Flood play completely differently to the Covenant. These guys are essentially space zombies that can use guns, where the Covenant have a clear squad structure and will have smart enough AI to know when to retreat, hold position, or charge at you for an easy kill. All the Flood know is charge. These guys will swarm you and shoot at you whilst doing it. They have 3 distinct enemy types. Whilst these enemy types are a little more basic and easier to understand than the Covenants, there are still certain strategies you have to use while fighting these guys, and these strategies will not work at all with the Covenant. The Sentinels are called more of a sub-faction because there's only one enemy type, those being the Sentinels. And they're essentially floating elites with laser beams and really weak shields. All of these enemies and factions behave similarly to different pieces of a chessboard. They all have unique behaviors that they will not deviate from, and knowing these behaviors and how to counteract them is the fun of Halo's combat. For the Covenant, the best weapons to use are the Plasma Pistol, Sniper Rifle, and Magnum. For the Flood, it's the Shotgun, Assault Rifle, and Plasma Rifle. And for the Sentinels, it's the Plasma Rifle and Plasma Pistol. Whilst there is some overlap in these factions' weaknesses, it's not enough to the point where there is a single crutch loadout that is the best at killing all enemies efficiently. Even the well-known noob combo is only really effective against the Covenant. Using this combo on the Flood is a death sentence. Using this chess piece analogy, you might be thinking, well, what piece is the player then? And the player is the queen, able to move in any direction for as many spaces as they see fit and can easily adapt to fast changing situations. However, whilst they might be able to fuck up a pawn, if you move to a bad position to do so, where a knight, rook, castle, or hell, even another pawn is able to get you, it's game over for the queen. Much like in Halo, you may be able to easily kill a grunt, but if you move into a bad position where there's no cover and you're being attacked out in the open, even another lowly grunt will take that as a free kill. And I haven't even mentioned the vehicles yet. The vehicles don't really have that same chess piece gameplay like the guns and enemies do, instead going for a more fun factor. All of these vehicles are iconic and aren't just staples of Halo, but gaming as a whole. My only complaint is that the Scorpion tank in Combat Evolved is pretty bad. The whole point of a tank is to be able to shoot precise, high damaging shots from long ranges with slow movement being the trade-off for its crazy high accuracy. In this game though, the tank has slow movement and incredibly low accuracy. Seriously, my penis would be a more accurate weapon if I whipped it out and started pissing it at an enemy 10 kilometers away in the middle of a hurricane. The tank sections in this game are the least fun out of the entire series in my opinion. All of these chess piece-like philosophies within the game sandbox lead to an incredibly fair experience on higher difficulties. You see, unlike other games where the higher the difficulty, the more the enemies become bullet sponges, dealing 10 times the amount of damage you do with almost aimbot levels of accuracy, the higher you go in Halo's difficulty just means you encounter more of the higher ranks of enemies more often. Strategies you can use on easy mode are just as viable on legendary, although you will need to take extra precautions to avoid death. This leads to an extremely fun, fair, and challenging high difficulty, with the exception of some of the Flood-centric levels. Now, whilst I've been absolutely sucking the skin off this game's dick when it comes to the game's sandbox, I do unfortunately have to unpucker my lips a little bit and add some teeth into this blowjob, as the game's level design is a very mixed bag. You see, whilst the game has levels like the Silent Cartographer and Assault on the Control Room, which are missions that are equivalent to receiving a motorboat by prime Scarlett Johansson, there are also levels like the Library, which on higher difficulties can feel like being forced to drink the anal secretion of Ivan, the local meth head who lives behind the 7-Eleven down the street. I'm just kidding, Ivan. I love your anal secretion. The issue with levels like the library with the Flood as the main enemy type get amplified with the addition of Rocket Launcher Flood. These are the only enemy that don't fit into the previously mentioned chess piece like gameplay, as these guys can be extremely unfair, with being able to one-shot you or even accidentally kill you if they're trying to aim at another enemy. And if you encounter one of these guys in a vehicle section on a high difficulty, it is just absolute cancer to get through sometimes.
Are you fucking kidding me? I'm around the fucking corner!
With gameplay this amazing, you'd hope the story keeps up with it, and thankfully it does. The game begins with us on the run from the Covenant and accidentally coming across this ring-shaped world, which we later find out is called Halo. We are also introduced to Captain Keyes, Cortana, and the playable character, the Master Chief, all in the first 10 minutes of the game, and thrust into gameplay with us having to evacuate from the Pillar of Autumn and make an emergency landing on the new Ring world. Half of the game is spent with the Covenant as the main enemies, and the story essentially being to stop them from taking control of the ring and trying to figure out what Halo is. Throughout this first half of the game, the main thing we learn is that it was made by an extinct race of aliens called the Forerunners. Halfway through the game, we are introduced to the Flood and also learn that Halo is actually a weapon built by the Forerunners to kill the Flood. How Halo works is that it can't directly kill the Flood, but it can kill their food. What is their food, you might ask? Well, it's every sentient living being in the galaxy. Around the time of this realization, we are introduced to another main character called 343 Guilty Spark, who starts off by helping us, but we then realize he's been withholding information about the ring's true purpose, then betrays us when we tell him we're not going to fire the ring. Guilty Spark is also in control of the Sentinels, and he then becomes our main antagonist for the remainder of the game. Cortana then comes up with a plan to stop the Covenant and Guilty Spark while simultaneously killing the Flood, and that plan involves making the Pillar of Autumn's engines explode. Holy shit. Make the Pillar of Autumn's engines explode like my fucking throat just did, with enough force to destroy Halo. Of course we succeed at this because Chief and Cortana are just goaded with the Source, and the game ends in a way where if this were the only Halo game to ever be made, it would be a satisfying ending, but also leaves it open-ended enough for potential sequels at the same time.
Did anyone else make it?
Scanning. Just dust and echoes. We're all that's left. We did what we had to do, for Earth. An entire Covenant armada obliterated, and the Flood. We had no choice. Halo, it's finished.
No. I think we're just getting started.
To finally finish this video up, Halo Combat Evolved is peak. Not only was it the beginning of an amazing franchise with its story and revolutionary multiplayer, which I didn't even talk about in this video, but it was also instrumental in game development as a whole, with almost every game after it copying many of the design choices Halo popularized. Anyway, that's it for today's video. If you enjoyed the video, please remember to like and subscribe. Bye.